Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So today I want to talk about something that I've brought up a lot of times in various videos, but I really have been meaning to make its own sort of focused content about. And that is what I believe to be the #1 most frequent misplay that I see in Master Duel. And I see this misplay made at every level of play. Lower ranked ladder, upper ranked ladder, tournaments, content creators. I see it everywhere. And it involves two of the most commonly played cards in Master Duel. It's going to be Max C as well as the Mulch Army Fuelos. And it's about the timing of using these cards. A lot of you probably already know where I'm going with this. Again, it's something I've talked about quite a bit before, but the #1 misplay that I think people make in Master Duel is firing off Max C or Fuelos during their opponent's draw phase on turn 1 before the opponent has done anything at all. Now, there are a number of arguments to be made when it comes to firing off versus holding Max C, which is actually better. So I'm going to kind of go through those a little bit and talk about what I think is the right thing to do, generally speaking. And I also have a few different replays to show some games where I'm going to give examples of where I think firing the Max C or Fuelos during the draw phase was a detriment to my opponent who was using them. So first things first, I do want to acknowledge that there are some benefits to firing off a Max C. Again, when I'm saying firing off, or as I've said in the past a lot, shotgunning Max C or Fuelos, I'm referring to you're going second. During your opponent's draw phase, you activate the Max C before your opponent has a chance to do anything, before you know what they're playing, etc. A lot of the biggest reasons to do this are, one, in order to ensure that you get draws for special summons that don't start chains. Think Diabellstar the Black Witch, Cashier Unicorn, those kinds of things. The other reason would be to play around Triple Tactics Talent. This, of course, is a card that only goes off when the opponent uses an effect during the main phase, right? So that would make sense as well. But I believe those to be, honestly, the two sole reasons why I would consider using this during the draw phase. Some other arguments I've seen to shotgunning / firing off Max C and Fuelos is, one, it ends your opponent's turn before they even have a chance to do anything, right? Because your opponent will likely just click end phase and then you get a free turn. I would argue this is true if you choose to hold the Max C or Fuelos and use it later, and I'll get into this in a little bit, but not only that, but if you choose to hold it, not only does it end your opponent's turn, but they've already used resources as well, putting them in an even more detrimental position. So, I understand that argument, but I really think you could make it either way, so I don't really consider that a pro to firing off Max C or Fuelos. The other big thing that I see a lot of people say is that, oh, well, if your hand is bad, if you don't have any plays, you want to fire off Max C so that way you can guarantee draws or get more draws. But I would actually argue the opposite. I think that if your hand is bad and you want more draws, you should be waiting to chain until you know your opponent's going to special summon. Like if they activate an effect that special summons, or if they have their tuner and non-tuner on the field, for example, if they're a synchro deck, etc. And actually, I will say this too, as far as the pros for firing off Max C and Fuelos, the reasons to do it that I listed earlier, while those are positive reasons, I really don't think that they're, good enough, honestly. What I mean by that is that, okay, yes, you can draw phase Max C or Fuelos. Really, this is referring more to Max C than anything else. You can draw phase Max C and get a draw off your opponent's Diabellstar or Cashier Unicorn or other special summon that doesn't start a chain. However, that's going to be the vast minority of games where that is your opponent's literal first action. You very occasionally might miss a draw for that reason, but I think for the most part, that is not something, even when you're playing against Snake Eye, right? There are so many hands where the opponent opens with something other than Unicorn or Diabell Star. So many other opportunities to, again, make sure that you get the draw. And also, for that matter, if you're firing off the Max C or the Fulos, again, most likely the Max C in this situation, your opponent is probably not going to, well, in the case of Diabell Star, they're not going to special summon her anyway. In the case of Cashier Unicorn, they will, and that's disruption anyway. And that's kind of what I mean when I say it comes down to getting your opponent to use up their resources, right? You don't want your opponent to be holding that Diabell Star, so that way they can hand trap you and stop you, and then have that Diabell Star for their follow-up turn. You want them to throw out that Diabell Star and have already used it. That way, when you then Max C, they're in a more rough position, because they're like, oh, shoot, okay, well now if I continue to combo, they get a ton of draws, but if I don't, now I don't have plays for my next turn. That's the kind of, like, position you want to put your opponent in. And I do think that playing around Triple Tactics talent is valid. Like, this card is played, and it is good. But this deck is played as a one-of, or this card, rather, is played in decks as a one-of, generally, maybe sometimes a two-of, but I don't know. I just don't think it's worth playing around exactly a handful of cards that are going to make up the vast minority of your games to play these cards, which are going to make up the, I won't say vast majority of your games, but a significant portion of your games, more so than the ones where you'll see your opponent on Diabell Star, Unicorn, or Triple Attack in their opening hand. I just don't think the trade-off is worth it. So the reasons to hold the Max C, and when I say hold Max C or Fulos, I'm referring to waiting to use it for after your opponent has either invested resources onto the board or you know they're going to special summon. So for example, against Snake Eye, right? Instead of Max C'ing during their draw phase, you wait to Max C after they go Diabell Star, set Original Sinful Spoils, and then activate the Original Sinful Spoils. For Fulos, I'm typically waiting until, if I know my opponent's playing Blue Eyes, for example, I'll wait till they have, like, the Sage on board before they go to Link Summon the Spirit, right? This puts your opponent in a position where now they have to make a difficult decision of whether to continue to combo or to stop. And it's generally correct to stop, but some people will continue to go anyway. You want to give your opponent the opportunity to misplay, right? More than that, there are a ton of other things that you can gain, you know, from holding the other Max C. It secures your draws, as I mentioned. If you wait to use, for example, Max C in response to an effect that is going to special summon, you will guaranteed get draws. There are other minor things you play around by doing it this way, like Gamma, for example, although Gamma is not nearly as common as Triple Attack. I'll definitely grant you that. But Information is honestly one of the biggest things that you can gain from holding Max C and Fulos as opposed to shotgunning them, right? So the information that you give your opponent when you draw phase Max C is so much greater than if you hold it. So, for example, right, and we'll see replays where I show some more in-depth examples here in a moment, but for example, if I'm playing a Blue Eyes deck and my opponent draw phase Max C's me, and I'm holding, like, the Primite engine, Ether Barrel and Sage, right? Well, not necessarily Ether Barrel and Sage, because you'd always need Ether Barrel, but long story short, like, I can still play into the Max C just enough to make my Drill Beam live with, like, Lordly Load, and then I'm fine because I gave my opponent one draw, and now I have a negate set up. As opposed to if you wait until they are about to go into more plays like Spirit Dragon, for example, then all of a sudden you put them in a position where, like, oh no, I've committed to starting the Blue Eyes combo line, so now I either have to awkwardly end my turn having wasted resources and not established any amount of negates, or give even more draws to get even one negate. Again, that's kind of an arbitrary example that doesn't have any visual reference, so why don't we actually just move on into some of these replays that I have lined up here. I wanna show some of these off. So this first example is actually from a previous YouTube video that I posted. It's from my Why I Enjoy Snake Eye video, and I should have saved the replay but this is as good as well. I'm just going to mute myself here, so obviously you don't have two of me talking. And we're going to see a replay here where my opponent is going to begin by, wait for it, firing off a Fuelos as soon as I use Wanted during the draw phase. Basically a, draw phase Fuelos, right? Now, you'll notice that I have the Droll and Lockbird in hand, and this is something that I can obviously use against Max C / Fuelos, but specifically because my opponent shotgunned the Fuelos here, I'm actually able to get myself in a position where I can do all of my deck's searches without giving them a draw off of Fuelos, right? Until I've already done all the searches, and then from there I can Droll full combo and they won't have any more draws. This is exactly what I was just referring to when I was talking about information, right? Like if my opponent had waited to use the Fuelos until I had like 4 monsters on board like this, well then I'd have to just end my turn at that point, right? More or less. I don't know why they impermed the unicorn either. I think that must have been a misclick, but anyway. Or, you know what, I think they were actually just not wanting to get extra deck ripped and thinking that maybe I was going to have a hand trap. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. The point is that, like, yeah, if they had just fired off the Fuelos once I had already committed a bunch of monsters to the board, again, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to do all those searches first. Then that would have put me in an awkward spot where I have to decide, okay, do I want to use... How many of my searches do I want to give up on before I Droll on this Fuelos, right? So this is exactly what I mean when I say you give your opponent information by shotgunning the Fuelos or Max C early. You give them information less about what's in your hand, which is typically what you might think of when you think of information in a card game, but more information about how to play out their turn. Like, it's basically just telling your opponent very heads up what you have ready for them. And that's not obviously a position you want to put them in. You want to take them by surprise with your hand trap and put them in an awkward spot, you know? Basically, don't lay up your opponent to optimize their play, right? And I think that is a lot of the time what is happening when you are doing the draw phase Maxi and Fuelos. I won't go into the rest of this replay. I'll just link this video in the description below if you... I'm never going to concede here anyway. Yeah, I'll link this description, the video below if you want to see more of these replays or this one again. But I do have 2 more that I do have saved in Master Duel that we're going to take a look at as well here. Okay, so both of these replays that we're going to watch here, I've got 2. This is going to be me playing Primite Fiendsmith Control against a couple of decks here. This first one's going to be us going up against Blue Eyes. So, as you can see, our opponent is taking the first turn here, and they're leading with Branded... I forgot, this person's actually playing a Branded package in their Blue Eyes deck as well. Leading with the Branded Fusion, call buying the Ash Blossom. This is all fine. Mainly, of course, again, showing this game to demonstrate that my opponent using the draw phase Max C / Fuelos. I don't remember which one it is from this opponent off the top of my head. And how it's not going to be optimal. It's not even just using it during the draw phase, though. I will occasionally see, and I think one of these 2 games is going to be somebody doing this. I'll occasionally see somebody who will use the Max C or Fuelos in response to, like, a search effect during the main phase. And that's actually even worse than using it during the draw phase. Using it during the draw phase does have at least a couple of, perceivable benefits, but... yep, this opponent's going to do it here. I normal summon Ether Barrel, they chain Max C. Why would you chain Max C at a time like this, right? Not only do you not get any of the benefits of doing it during the draw phase, but on top of that, like... Now I have the information, as mentioned before. So, but if I had a triple attack here, I would very easily be able to just steal your Mirror Jade, and then just walk away with the game very easily from that point forward. Also, doing it this way doesn't play around something like the Abelstar or Unicorn, because I already would have special summoned it by this point. I know the reason that my opponent did it here is because they have their toggle set to auto, which, like... I understand that not everybody's going to be, like, hyper, fixated on playing the game optimally the same way that I am all the time. But, You know, if you're on auto, that's fine. You can just wait to chain the Max C to an actual summon effect. If you want to kind of surprise the opponent, like my opponent attempted to do here, you just toggle on. It's also really as simple as that as well. I don't know, you see this all of the time. You see this so unbelievably often, and it is just like, why? Every single time I'm just like, why are we doing it this way? So yeah, rather than try to go for, like, Engraver and do a bunch of Fiendsmith stuff, like, think about if they had waited until I went discard Engraver, add Tract, Tract F, discard Lurie, activate Lurie, then chain to Max C. They would have gotten an extra draw here, because I still would have had to go into Typhone in order to, you know, get rid of the Mirror Jade with a minimal number of special summons. They would have gotten an extra draw off that, and I would have used up my Fiendsmith engine. Now, as you'll see here on my follow-up turn, now I have Engraver, and I can just do Fiendsmith stuff, and that's how I can walk away with the game now. Whereas, yeah, before they would have been able to, like, I would have had Lurie on the field. I would have kind of had to awkwardly pass on that. They could have battled over the Lurie. Now, all of a sudden, I don't have access to a Fiendsmith board anymore. I have a Druiswarm plus Typhone, which going into their board might still be more than they have, but is less than I would have right now. This is like, this kind of thing happens all the time. And again, I understand the majority of people on Ranked Ladder are not focusing that much on the game, but I've always made this channel with the intent of, like, you know, I am very much all about improving my, you know, competitive play, and that is, for that reason, going to be the focus of what I tend to talk about here. So in purely just terms of, like, you're playing optimally, you're, you know, again, you're playing competitively, there's just no reason to use Max C at a time like my opponent did here. Yeah, the Primite Roar here as well, but we have the Desiree. I mean, at this point, yeah, I was going to say, the replay is about over, and I've already kind of made my point with this one, but that's yeah, again, if you are going to fire off Max C, I'm not arguing that that's always a misplay, but do it during the draw phase. Doing it during the main phase against something like a search effect like Ether Barrel, I think that is legitimately always a misplay. But I have one more replay I want to share with you before we finish off here. And that is going to be this game against Sword Soul here. This is actually another going second game. I know I said a lot of, you know, what I was going to focus on was just firing it off, you know, when you're going second, but there's a lot of ways where even if you have an established board, you know, firing off the Max C is still not something you want to be doing. It's a little bit more acceptable in that regard, a little bit, if you think your board is already good enough to out whatever your opponent's going to be doing, but you know, here, for example, my opponent's board is just the Iris Sword Soul and not really anything else. So I really don't think that's something where, like, you should be fine just maxing and hoping that your opponent gives you draws. Like, clearly they had a Klesia, so if they had, like, a Sword Soul or Worm Monster, they would have gone Moye and then combo, right? But the fact that they didn't tells me their hand really isn't that great. This is a situation where they really needed to use the Max C there in order to make sure that they had plays for their follow-up turn. Also, you'll notice that I didn't even chain the Ash Blossom that I drew. I chained Magnum Hut instead. This is yet another reason why I really don't think firing off the Max C is that good, is because it doesn't even consider the fact that what if Max C isn't even good into your opponent's hand? I've had so many hands where I'm just like, alright, I guess I'm just gonna, you know, normal summon pass, basically. And then my opponent draw phase Max C's me, and I'm like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that moving forward now, do I? Now, here, I do have Primite stuff, yes, but here's the thing. Since my opponent's already presented such a weak opening board, I'm totally fine chaining Magnum Hut to the Max C to special summon it, using Magnum Hut to crash into the Iris Sword Soul, while using Lordly Load to normal summon Ether Barrel instead of Drill Beam, all without giving my opponent any draws. They can imperm me here, that's completely fine. I still have Ghost Ogre and Ash Blossom and Ball Drake going into my opponent's turn here. So Again, since I know that their hand is not great because of the way that and then yeah, they concede here, right? So I know my opponent's hand isn't great. I know they're really desperate for their draws, and the fact that they played so heads up gives me the advantage. That's the thing, right? It sounds really counterintuitive to think, why would playing Max C during the draw phase give my opponent the advantage? This hand was a perfect demonstration of why that's the case. My opponent just so heads up saying, hey, not only do I not have anything good to play because I went Irish Sword Soul Pass, but I'm also really desperate to get these draws because I fired off Max C, tells me, oh, well, all right, I could just not give you any of the draws, save Ash Blossom for a follow-up turn because I'm not going to OTK you this turn anyway, also have other hand traps, and just, yeah, give you absolutely nothing. So hopefully this video was a good insight as to why I feel the way that I do. Because I feel very strongly about this, right? Again, it's something I've brought up a lot. Obviously, I've made a whole video dedicated to the topic. I feel quite strongly about it. I really do think that this is like the #1 misplay that I see everybody doing. And every time I see it happen, I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? Now, again, this is obviously with a focus on competitive play. I understand there are a lot of people who play Master Duel to relax. They want to kind of turn their brain off. They still want to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, but they want to turn their brain off a little bit. And in that regard, yeah, if you're just going to want to make sure the Max C goes off and are less concerned about doing it at an optimal time and more about just doing it in general, then sure, yeah, fire it off during the draw phase. And as mentioned, there are a couple of minor benefits to even doing that. However, I think for the most part, you should definitely be holding it until your opponent is about to special summon. So anyway, that is going to do it for now. Thank you so very much for watching and listening to me rant about this topic, which again, I feel very strongly about it. Hopefully you understand why now. That's going to do it for now, though. Let's move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.